Good morning. My name is Joanne Wong, and I'm Director of Corporate Services at the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council. Thank you so much for taking the time today to participate in the How to Do Business with Boston Scientific Corporation. Today, we have the team from Boston Scientific, Sekan Coker, Supplier Diversity Manager, and Todd McCaslin, Global Sourcing Director, who will provide an overview of Boston Scientific's Procurement and Supplier Diversity Program. I want to thank Boston Scientific so much for not only being a gold level annual sponsor, but also an elite level sponsor of G&E MSDC. Their funding is critical for our programming to provide services for minority business enterprises, and we could not do this work without them. So again, thank you so much. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. We are recording this session. This presentation will be shared at the conclusion of the event, and we have a large number of attendees. So for the Q&A portion, please make sure to put your questions in the Q&A box and not the chat box so we don't miss any. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Sekan and Todd.
Great, thank you so much, Joanne. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We're very happy to be able to talk to you all today. I am Sekan Coker, Supplier Diversity Manager at Boston Scientific, and I will let Todd introduce himself.
All right, I'm Todd McCaslin, Global Sourcing Director here at Boston Scientific. Been here for a long time, so we can start talking questions. It's approaching 4 decades, and fantastic to be able to share what it takes to get into Boston Scientific as a supplier, what it's like to work with us, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of great questions at the end of our presentation. So Ken's going to start us off, go through a little bit of our mission and values, and a little bit about Boston Scientific. I'll take you through the landscape of Boston Scientific. What do we buy, categories, that sort of thing. So Ken, you want to run us through the mission and values?
Great. Yes, absolutely. So Todd and I, and given that Todd has told you how long he's worked at Boston Scientific BSC, and I've been here for just under 6 years, so we're truly proud and thrilled to work for a company that values so much with regards to innovation, performance, collaboration, diversity, and having a winning spirit. So these are kind of all of the values that I feel like I personally embody, and I know Todd feels the same, which is why we're thrilled to work for a company that really focuses on this. Our mission statement is that we're dedicated to transforming lives through innovative medical solutions that improve the health of patients around the world. Now, we know that we can only get to those innovative solutions by using small and diverse vendors in our partnerships. And that's one of the great reasons we have such a good partnership with G&E, MSDC, and Joanne and Peter. And one of the reasons why we love to talk to all of you and find out what your services and product offerings are. So just to give you a little overview of Boston Scientific in a nutshell, we're a medical device company. We've been a global technology leader for more than 40 years. Our categories are based into 3 major sections, which is med-surg, made up of endoscopy and urology and public health, pelvic health. We have rhythm and neuro, which is cardiac rhythm management, and electrophysiology. Also included in that is neuromodulation. And lastly, but certainly not least, is cardiovascular. So we have teams that manage interventional cardiology and peripheral interventions. So I'm not going to spend too much time giving you more details on this. This is all kind of public knowledge that's available on our external websites. And we're happy to share these slides with you to let you know kind of the scope of our divisions. Todd, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk to the team about global sourcing.
Sure. Well, I don't know who on the call has been working with Boston Scientific over the years, or at least in conversations with us, but for those of you that know a little bit about the history of Boston Sci, we started off as a very small company, it was $10 million when I joined. And we grew probably half and half through internal growth, through product development, and externally through acquisitions of other companies. Sounds great. We were growing 40, 50% a year back in the 80s, and then it kind of slowed down as we got larger. But one of the things that became very difficult was that we were a decentralized, a little bit of a mess from a corporation standpoint. We had, every plant would have their own sourcing strategies. And if you were working with a Galway, Ireland plant, or if you're working with the Spencer, Indiana plant, bless you, again, you'd run into different directive strategies and people to work with. So jumping forward many years, in 2015, we reorganized the company from a procurement, specifically sourcing standpoint. We got a global senior VP of sourcing, kind of like our CPO. I moved into that group from a different organization, and we formed global teams that represented all sourcing, no matter where you were. So if you were dealing with our Penang, Malaysia site, our Spencer, Indiana site, our Maple Grove site, and if you were dealing with metals, there was one team that made that sourcing decision and also was responsible for driving growth in the diverse supplier areas and cost savings and all that other sort of thing. So what we did is we broke it up into 5 major categories. Now we have kind of technology-based metals, PRC, which is plastic, resin, chemicals. This is all the direct side. Our electronics group, packaging, and sourced finished medical device. That's our acronym for SFMD, kind of the OEM and contract manufacturing world. And then with each of these groups, there are these sub-teams. So in metals, precision machining, we have a team around that. And all of our teams are set up with a sourcing commercial person, a supplier engineer. We've made a lot of investments into the engineering teams, and a supplier quality person. So you have that kind of 3-legged stool approach to every single category. And every one of these categories have a category strategy, and they meet and so on and so forth. So that's on the direct material side, bill of material type things that go into our products. So Ken, why don't you jump to the next slide? It's not going.
Sorry, there's a little bit of a lag here.
Come on. And just at a high level spend, and we do share that on the direct material side, Boston's spending probably about $1.5 billion in direct material purchases. And it just doesn't seem to be going for some reason.
Todd, are you able to see the slide?
I am only seeing the direct material slide. There we go. It moved on my end. Hopefully everybody that's on the call also has that.
Okay.
Now over on the indirect materials side of the world, so you're talking, obviously HR, facilities work, professional services, legal, a lot. Global indirect spend is very high. It's about, oh gosh, I think we're up around $2.7 billion of spend. Now that includes things like, our benefits, things that we, from a sourcing standpoint, don't necessarily have a direct impact on. But you can look at, travel, facilities, said professional services, legal, what have you. And that group, same sort of thing. We have teams of people that specialize in those. Now, in the indirect, we have both regional and global sourcing people. And the way that works out is if you're working, say, a facilities maintenance contract in Spencer, Indiana, you're probably not going to have the same person as in Galway, Ireland. So there are regional strategies as well in the indirect side. Let me try to jump onto the next one there, so Ken. It is slow.
Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
It's
So
changed on my side.
Yeah, okay, has it on me, hopefully the other folks. And essentially what I'm gonna go into in the next slide when it actually shows up is talking about the strategies that we use in global sourcing to drive, there we go, drive the performance of Boston Scientific's procured services and or materials to a high level. And number one in there is a global inclusive high performance team. So one of the things that we've done, I said, started 5 years ago, is we spent a lot of time reorganizing people, training people, ensuring that everybody had a spot on a team, had their voice heard, was able to interact with the engineers, the divisions within Boston Scientific. So let's say maybe an endoscopy R&D division, because in the direct side of the world, those choices for a supplier are made very early when you're developing a product, or with a facility that is, say, expanding, if it's a construction or if it's a legal expansion, things like that. We segment our supply base. So I know many of our have segmented their customer bases, but we look at strategic, preferred, standard, and then we have a couple of ones you don't want to be in, restricted, and phase out. So we look at the suppliers that provide, let's say, advantages to Boston Scientific if we're comparing ourselves to a Medtronic or a J&J. I think I talked a little bit about global categories are managed by subject matter expert teams. So if you're dealing with legal services, you're going to have somebody that's really embedded, and Saken knows as well because she used to be in this area, somebody that's embedded into the legal team at Boston Scientific. So it's a very close-knit relationship. I just mentioned the R&D side. We engage early. We have engineers in sourcing that report to my boss, same as I do. They sit on product development teams. So you might be talking about a calibration service or a chemical test lab or direct materials. We spend a lot of time with our stakeholders internally, whether those are the divisions, research and development, the facilities around the country and around the world. We have a sourcing COE, Center of Excellence, that focuses on our systems and processes to ensure that we're doing things both efficiently and effectively. And you need both of those to be what's called world-class. And then we track. Boston Scientific is a metrics-driven company like you wouldn't believe. So we track everything. We put a performance scorecard together, and we look at quality number one, service, total cost, new products, and I could go through them for the next hour and a half, but we're not going to do that. All right, so Ken, I think the next thing we have is where we got here. I know the video wouldn't work on Zoom, so we're going to skip a video that Mike Mahoney had, which was a really nice one. So sorry,
Yes.
not being able to do that.
So I've moved ahead to the supplier diversity slide and the highlights from 2020 to 2021.
And I'm going to let you take this one because you are the pro here.
Okay, great. Are you able to see the supplier diversity slide?
Yeah, it came up.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, folks, I'm the supplier diversity manager for Boston Scientific. I've been in this role for just under 4 years, and really I am the first full-time employee to manage this program, and it's been my great pleasure to work to grow the program, to really increase our spend and increase the relationships that we have with small and diverse vendors. And we've really kind of been much more engaged with national organizations and regional organizations like GNE. And so a couple of the things that we've done over the last year and a half, because we weren't busy enough with COVID, we did launch a Supplier Diversity Ambassadors program, which is an internal program. My philosophy is that as the Supplier Diversity Manager, it's not just my job to go out and meet with the vendors. It really is my job to create that internal message of how important supplier diversity is and how does it affect each and every one of our employees. And so we've launched this internal ambassadors program so that we can have representation in every group, department, and division at Boston Scientific. So we've gotten numerous kind of high-level executives involved in this, and they are generally spreading the word about why supplier diversity is important. They're looking at their spend in their particular areas, and they're looking at areas of opportunity. So we're very excited that we've launched this program this year, and we really hope to grow it out and expand the number of ambassadors that we have throughout the organization. This year, we also launched our BOE, or Black Entrepreneur Supplier Mentorship Program. And I'll talk a little bit about a combating racism initiative that we launched in response to the George Floyd murders and racial tensions, and in response to the just phenomenally adverse effect of COVID on minority population groups, most especially the Black population group, because we all know that they've been the population group that's been the most adversely affected. So Boston Scientific launched a Combating Racism initiative where we pledged $2.5 million over the course of 2.5 years to combating racism, to empowering the Black community. One of the pillars of that initiative is economic empowerment, which is essentially supplier diversity. So Todd and I have been a part of this pillar. We've been the leads for spreading kind of the knowledge about it, and also for gaining funding for specific programs. So for example, we last year we pledged $100K to support national Black business organizations. That was split between the NMSDC and the GNE MSDC. This year we launched the mentorship program. We currently have 6 mentees who are Black entrepreneurs in our program. They are working with mentors who are all internal BSC employees. The program is going phenomenally well right now. We do have an executive educational element to it. All of the mentees are going through a mini executive training program through Babson College. We hope to expand this program out next year. So we hope that the cohort will be larger. And in future years, we are going to be expanding our program to include all small and diverse vendors as well. One of kind of the biggest achievements we had last year was early payment terms for small and diverse vendors. So any vendors that are under 250K in spend that are small or diverse are now paid on a net 20-day payment term. So I think you all know that this is a phenomenal rate. I don't know of any of our peers that have, this great rate. So we're very proud of that. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback. We know that, cash is one of the most important aspects to running your businesses. And so we really acknowledge that and worked very hard to see what solutions we could find to help with that. And Todd, thank you. You've been a great champion for the diverse vendors and these early payment terms. So I couldn't have done it without Todd. The other bit of news for you is that effective this month, I've taken over as president of the Diversity Alliance for Science. So those of you who are not familiar, that's a national life science diversity organization that focuses on partnering diverse vendors and corporates. So I'm excited for that partnership and expanding the partnership with GNE as well. This week, we also have a new VP of Global Sourcing who just started with us. Her name is Chandrika Karavadra. She is taking over from Michael O'Flynn, and the VP of Global Sourcing is our equivalent of a CPO. So we're very excited to have her on board. She does have experience with supplier diversity. So Todd and I will be meeting with her in the upcoming weeks to formulate some new strategies and figure out the direction of our program and where we would like to take it in the next couple of years. So with that, I'm very happy to open it up to questions. Joanne, you can let us know if we have any.
All right, great. So we do have a few questions that have come in already. So let's see, within direct materials, there's actually 2 questions from the same individual that are regarding different categories. So within indirect materials, HR, temp labor, can you elaborate on what the needs would be? That's the first part of the question.
Sure.
Direct materials. So we have I'm hearing 2 questions here. Direct materials and HR temp labor.
Indirect materials.
Okay, indirect materials. I thought you should have. That's always a hard one. Indirect. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm happy to start this one off, Todd. So we just completed an RFP for a managed service provider for an MSP for staffing this year. We are staying with our incumbent Talent Choice. We do have a very robust small and diverse vendor program beneath them. And so we are looking to ramp that up under the Talent Choice umbrella. So I'm going to be working with them in the next year to include more small and diverse vendors under that umbrella. So those are the current opportunities that we have. What we do is we ask, and I know that some of the vendors are going to cringe at this, but I really do ask you to register in our supplier registration portal. I guarantee you that this is used on a daily basis. And I can tell you that we've just been through a small business administration audit 3 weeks ago. And part of it was us to provide proof that we are searching for small and diverse vendors. And we pulled the reports from our registration portal to show how many times it's been accessed in a day. And I can tell you it's accessed numerous times in a day by the entire sourcing group. Because one of the things that Todd and I did when once taking over supplier diversity is we implemented a brand new supplier registration portal. So we use Supplier.io. They are our valued and trusted partner. We believe that they have ease of access for registration within this portal. So we really do ask vendors to register within the portal if you're not already, because that is our first point of reference when we're searching for small and diverse vendors.
Okay, so follow-up question from the same individual. Within indirect materials information systems, do you have a need for staffing services to supply software, hardware, and IT folks?
So that's kind of the same answer because they're managed under the same MSP for a lot of it. So it would be the same kind of collaboration within our MSP. If there is a specific need that folks decide to go outside of the MSP for, which is very rare and not encouraged, the first point would be for folks to search through the supplier registration portal to see which vendors are available.
Yeah, and just a really general question from, do we have needs? We're running over $4 billion of spend on services and or direct materials. I think it was 1.5 on the direct materials. And then on the indirect side, we were at, 2.7. So that is to support the current size of Boston Scientific, which is running around $11 billion. And I know our, C-level leadership has communicated to Wall Street that we have a line of sight to a $17 billion corporation. So that's a $6+ billion growth target that we have. We will need services and supplies from everybody. In every single one of those categories I showed, we're going to have growth, significant growth over the next 5 years. So, and I know we can talk as far as, over decades, how do you get into business with Boston Scientific? Part of it, I will be very honest with you, is perseverance. Okay, it's sometimes tough to get into a very large company like a Boston Scientific. You have to understand who to talk to, and Saken, myself, can absolutely help you with that. You need to show that what is your value proposition? No matter what, if you're in a direct material, you certainly have to have the quality requirements that Boston or any other medical device supplier will have. If you're on the indirect services, it's the old, how do you sell yourself? And that's actually part of, I see some of the questions later, Don, I'm cheating, I'm going ahead in the questions and answers. But you look at some of the mentorship programs and the ambassador programs that we have. Our ambassador program is internal, making people aware of the need and our requirements to expand our diverse supplier percentage of spend. On the external side, we're helping companies, and this is a slow start because we're doing, as Saken said, 6 mentees right now. And our symptoms of success, that's kind of the word we use. What's the symptom of success? Is that some of these companies become suppliers of Boston Scientific, or if not Boston Scientific, do they grow their business? So even if none of them become Boston Scientific suppliers, but they all grow their business by 50% over the next 2 years, that's fantastic for us. Okay, so it's helping the industry, it's helping the diverse supplier population. So we're going to help and teach, as Saken said, if you had a company that here, what do we need in, how do we market ourselves better? How do we approach the quality system development better? How do we, get in and just register through our portal? Those sort of things we help out and we'll tie people into the right people at Boston Scientific that maybe is a subject matter expert in developing a financial plan, developing a marketing brand strategy. What do we need in the calibration services need? What's our quality system regulations requirements, things like that.
And I just want to add on to that, Todd, Todd's absolutely right. Perseverance is, and you all know this as business owners, and you know how tough it is sometimes to get even that initial meeting. But he doesn't mean by that, it's like an email every week, right? I can tell you that I'm a one-person team right now, so my inbox is insane, as you can imagine. So, I do the best that I can to get to emails, within a reasonable time frame. But if I could give you a little bit more advice, I would tell you, it's been tough in a virtual world for the last 18 months. I fully acknowledge that. But the conferences are so important to attend. So even G&E, and if there's live matchmaking, whether it's a virtual one or live in person, I strongly encourage you to attend those and try to get those matches. I know it can be tough sometimes, but those are really important, because if we're talking to you face to face, the follow-up from that is much greater. So that's one thing that I want to encourage you with. I want to encourage you to get your certifications if you don't already have it. That organizations like G&E and others are just tremendously helpful in advancing not only your educational aspects, but attending webinars like these, etc. So that's another really strong point, I feel like. The other thing is, take a look at your website, take a look at your LinkedIn profile. Are they up to date? Do you have current photos? Is the photo up there from 15, 20 years ago? Could you revamp your website to be more user-friendly and easily accessible? Because these are things, if we get an email from you and we skip to your website or your LinkedIn profile, are we getting the information that we need as quickly as possible? Is it clear? Is it crisp? So really look at those kind of things. The other thing is, when you do get a conversation with one of us, can you deliver your value proposition and your capability statement concisely? Because we meet with a lot of different types of vendors. We meet with those that are very crisp and concise, and then we meet with those who take a little bit of time to articulate, and it takes us a little bit of time to figure out exactly what it is that you do. So if you're having trouble articulating that, please practice that. Practice with your family, practice with your friends, with the G&E, because I know they definitely have workshops on those kind of things. So that's the general kind of advice I would give for those who are on the newer side to starting your business.
Okay, I know you touched upon some of these questions, so I apologize if, let me see, I'm finding some in chat and Q&A. So let's see. When going through the supplier portal, what are the key things that you look for when you choose a particular company to include in the RFP?
Sure. So first of all, I understand it's tedious to fill this out in numerous portals. Trust me, I do. One of the reasons that we chose Supplier.io is because there are numerous life science companies that do use them. So a lot of our peers use them too. If you've already registered with them through a different life science company, you don't have to re-register through Boston's, because we will find you. Make sure that your information is as complete as possible. Right. One of the things we want to see is, what are your certifications? What are your, if you're self-certifying in some way, have your documentation uploaded, have all of the descriptions of your goods and services uploaded there. If you can upload your capability statements, any links to your websites, those are so key, because if I go up and I find a profile that's, kind of only a quarter of the way filled, I'm less inclined to do the research on my own when that could be provided for me there. So I would definitely advise you to fill those in as much as possible. So just a reminder, if you've registered with Supplier.io through a different corporate, you don't have to re-register with us, with Boston Scientific's one, because we still have access to you through their global database.
Okay, in regard to information, products, and services, how do we bridge introductions to decision makers within the key groups to introduce our products and services within Boston Scientific?
That's the tough question.
Yeah,
and it is.
Yeah.
So Ken said, we can't, every one of the, I have 5 other directors in sourcing that handle other categories. specifically handle packaging as a category and the supply chain or the sourcing center of excellence, which supplier diversity is part of. So I'll just give you, for instance, somebody shoots me a message. I look at it, they sound interesting. Goes back to what Ken says, what's the initial value proposition? I kid around a lot. My youngest son was a salesperson for Boston Scientific, actually for about 10 years. And, he talks about, you get 30 seconds of time to make that first impression. He's going in, he's a young kid talking to possibly a CFO at a hospital. How do I make that quick impression that person, that woman or that man is going to want to talk to me again? And so I think that way, and I give that advice to people that are selling into Boston Scientific. How do you get Ken, myself, Tim Dolan, or an engineer or a facilities manager interested in what you're doing? You have to get past that. And that's my one, old guy point of advice here. If you can interest somebody, they're going to take the next step. And I've done that. I've gotten a lot of cold emails or calls, and it's like, interesting. I'm going to hook that person up with Jason Prisbilla, who machining, or Kevin Harvey over in the indirect side, or we know the team. One of the nice advantages of this global sourcing team, and there's a lot of people. There's over 300 people in our organization, engineers and specialists. We're really well connected. We know each other well. If you picked out a service, I could find out in seconds who that person should talk to. So if you get past myself or Ken or one of the contacts that you can get, we're going to put you in contact with the right person to talk to. It might turn into a 20-minute conversation. And Ken, I know we're aiming at having a lot of conversations with diverse suppliers. And it's an internal, I was talking about metrics. We had some goals for the number of diverse supplier, what we call them, just kind of introductory capability assessments. Thank you. We just want to find, hey, how many people do we have in facilities maintenance, temp labor, precision machining, packaging and labeling, and we just keep that going because we are metric driven. So, you get into one of those conversations, it can spawn further discussions.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with all that, Todd. Think about relationship building, right? Don't always just focus on the hard sell. Trying to find some common ground with the person that you're talking to. And this doesn't just apply to BSC, right? It applies to any corporate you're talking to. Try to find some common ground, right? When you get that meeting, that initial meeting, know the company that you're talking to, please. I can't tell you how many times I've met with people that ask me, so what does Boston Scientific do? If you're able to get that meeting, please do the research. And if I further or Todd further sets you up with a key stakeholder within the organization, we really want you to do your research before talking to that individual. Because now it's kind of our reputation on the line as well, right? Because we've made the introduction, we've vouched for you. So please do that extra work to let that key stakeholder know that you know the company, you know what their role is. And also the other important aspect is focus on your core competency, okay? If you have 5 products or services that you deliver on, focus on the core competency that you're speaking to for that particular person. Because if you're kind of a jack of all trades, that makes it much harder for us because we want to know that you're an expert in the good or service that you're pitching to us. So that's really something that I would advise people as well.
Okay, great. Can you expand a bit on what types of opportunities there are within Boston Scientific under IT services or even IT-enabled services?
Sure. So I know that we're really working on digital transformation. We've been working with that even before COVID hit. So there's an even greater impact on that right now. So those are some of the things we're doing, some of that internally. So there may be elements of that we could partner with other vendors on. Todd, I'm not sure if you're aware of other aspects.
Not really, to be honest with you. This is one of those ones where it's a very specialized segment within the group. And I know like Jack Sanderson, who recently retired, would work with our chief information officer. And so it's kind of like HR benefits in a way. IT services are it's very important that we would connect you with that IT group actually outside of global sourcing. And there's certainly a lot of assessment on capabilities of an organization. We have a very large IT organization. You can imagine in a company the size of Boston Scientific, whether it's in the operational side, the support of SAP, the cybersecurity side. There's massive amount of IT work that we do. We do have a large internal group, but we do outsource. We do outsource some of our services. So,
The other thing, yeah. The other aspect that's worked really well from other vendors that I've met with and talked to is kind of forming partnerships with other small and diverse vendors. So for example, there is a group out there called Titanium, and they are a group of just under 10 small and diverse vendors that have banded together with various services from data analytics to marketing. And what they've done is formed this alliance so that they're able to respond to RFPs on a larger scale that they would not be able to do on their own. So I would definitely advise looking into options like that as well. Joanne, I'm going to edit the slide deck that we shared with you to include my own email. I'm only doing this for G&E folks, so I'll let you all email me directly so that we can we can chat via email on any other questions that we aren't able to address right now. I'm happy to do a little bit more research on the IT aspects that are being sourced right now.
Okay, I think there's only one more question that we haven't covered. This is, how do you handle an MBE MRO supplier that would compete against one of your national agreements with VWR or Fisher? Can you segregate certain products to an MBE?
Yeah, that's a great question. Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, those are big ones. You get the VWR, SVS, Fisher, Thermo, those type of big distributor folks. The question is, can you compete against somebody like that? It kind of comes down to that value added. We absolutely buy MRO supplies from a lot of companies other than the big guys. They don't always have the best service. They don't always have the best price. And sometimes they're a little bit difficult to deal with. It's probably like what you guys say about Boston Scientific. They're a big company, they're hard to deal with. So we do have a lot of, MRO type supplies. Now we have, I know the gentleman that handles our MRO for the company. He used to work in my team. I could give you Steven's email and he'd kill me. But we do a lot of that. So that it comes down to, your service, your cost, your quality, what's your value proposition. We don't specifically say we are going to take PPE stuff. So we did a lot of PPE, as everybody did during COVID, and specifically segment that to one company. Now, on the indirect side, especially things like MRO, those are very regionally focused. So you might have one batch of suppliers for our Minnesota site. You might have another batch of suppliers for our Dorado, Puerto Rico site or our Galway, Ireland site. So we get a more varied group of suppliers supplying to MRO because those are production support items. So there's really no limitations, quite frankly. Honestly, if you're trying to provide isopropyl alcohol to Boston Scientific, you're going to have a tough time competing with somebody like a Thermo Fisher. But if it's more general lab supplies or production supplies or facility supplies, we use a lot of people that are not the big ones.
Yeah. And absolutely, as you said, during COVID, there were numerous instances where we had to go outside of the larger companies who just couldn't supply us with what we needed. Joanne, I do see that there's one other question here that we missed. So Christopher Stanley is asking if we can talk more about the mentorship program and what does success look like for that program. So thank you, Christopher. That's a great question. Because this is our inaugural program, we've just launched it. But I can tell you that we do have experience with mentorship programs because we partner with a lot of the national organizations over the last few years, and we have been mentoring diverse vendors for a while. So the way we're measuring it right now is we start off the program with the mentees and mentors getting to know each other. We really want them to build a little bit of a relationship and some repertoire. And then we want them to set 3 major goals that they want to achieve during the mentorship program. So it's a 12-month program. We've asked the mentees to look at what are the 3 biggest obstacles or areas of concern or areas of development that they want to focus on during the mentorship program. So for example, one would come and say, I really need help with financial planning, analysis, forecasting. And so we've written that down, we've expanded the goal, we've created all SMART goals. How are we going to achieve it? How are you going to measure it? Who are we going to introduce you to help you with that? Excuse me. And so that is how we're going to measure it. We're going to measure it. How have their goals been attained to their satisfaction? Have they been attained to our satisfaction? Are they in a better position than they were when they started the program? I know they're certainly going to walk away with a lot more context because our mentors have been focused on making connections for them. And they focused on not only making connections within Boston Scientific, but externally as well. I know of one mentee that really needed help with HR. She was reluctant to make some new hires. And so one of the mentors introduced her to an HR firm that he's worked with in the past. And that person offered pro bono services to her for just some advice and some coaching on the staffing front. So that's really how we're going to measure that. If anyone's interested in more information, like I said, I will share my email so you can get in touch with me and I'll be happy to share that with you.
Okay, perfect. I don't know if this was touched upon, but I see there's a question about, are there any immediate IT staff augmentation service opportunities?
Yeah. So I don't believe there's any immediate ones right now, but I'm just going to go back to saying, please do register in the portal. We've trained all of our sourcing managers, specialists to use the portal as their first point of contact for their searches. So I definitely would recommend that. There's no current opportunities that I'm aware of.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, I think that is it. Unless anyone has any other questions, please type them in very quickly. But I want to say a big thank you to Saken and Todd for taking the time and for everyone for participating in this webinar. And as I mentioned, we will be sharing the presentation with Saken's contact information at the conclusion of the event. And thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Joanne. Thanks for the time, Todd. And thank you to all our attendees for listening in. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to talking to you also.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.